everyone. I just want to go over 10 things that you might want to know when moving to Louisville, Kentucky. So we're going to start with number one, and that would be the Kentucky Derby. The Kentucky Derby is approximately 2 weeks of active events, I would call them, active events that start with the Thunder over Louisville. And that is an entire day of air show, and then culminating at the end of the evening with about a 30-minute fireworks display that is pretty spectacular. They shoot it off of a bridge, which we closed down for about a week, and then also a barge, and then some from the river edge. So both sides of the river get to enjoy it. A lot of people are out in their boats throughout the day. Now, I do think they keep those pushed back at a certain level, distance for safety reasons. The downtown area on the Louisville side, I believe they said, and before COVID, now I don't know what it was this past year, but it was about 750,000 people. So it gets pretty packed, very popular. People try to, get their little spots and that, but it starts with Thunder. Now that's usually 2 weeks before Derby, but it can be as much as 3 weeks if Easter falls in that time. So that is a big deal. Of course, obviously the culmination of those 2 weeks is the Kentucky Derby, which is the first Saturday in May. So you can always figure those dates out pretty easy. And then if Easter falls in there, you back it up, Thunder up a week. Then we have a number of racing. There's not just racing on Derby Day. Many people think that's the only racing that goes on. So on Thursday, they call it Thurby. And everyone locally typically will come down there and go to the races and get in their finery with the hats and the dresses and the colorful suits on Thursday. So they call that Thurby now. And then there on Friday is Oaks. Oaks used to be where all the locals went, but then as more people from out of town infiltrated that Friday, trying to get more of a whole weekend out of it, then the locals shifted a little more towards Thursday. So you have racing on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and Oaks is the Phillies, but there is racing all day long. It's not just the one race. As far as the Derby, I believe there's 1 or 2 races after the actual Derby race. So there's maybe 10 or 12. Used to be a lot of debauchery in the infield for Derby. I don't believe that is that way anymore. They've changed the infield quite a bit. So that is a big deal. A lot of people, if they don't go, they will have parties on that day. We also have a parade. That's usually the Thursday before Derby. And that is downtown, goes through, and it's pretty big parade. Lots of local businesses, banks, things like that will sponsor it. And then it's just lined in the streets for miles in Louisville. Then we also have the Steamboat Race, which is on Wednesday. So that is usually the Delta Queen and the the Belle of Louisville. Sorry, Belle of Louisville. And it's it's back and forth all the time for these antlers. And some people are on the boats. They line the river. So big deal. We used to watch it from. I worked at Humana. We used to watch it from our windows because we were up on the 11th floor and we had work. So we would watch it. It's kind of fun. And there's a variety of things. And I'm going to share my screen with you right now to give me a second here, share screen. And so here we go. Here's a website for the Kentucky Derby. And as you can see, some things start as far back as April. And they start with a golf contest, some block parties in April, looks like a bike race. They're off lunch, and that's a big deal. You don't hear as much about these. I don't anyway, but this is a big deal. You hear about their off luncheon, and that's because that's getting closer. Obviously, you're end of April, towards the end of April here. Then there's bands and stuff down at the river. Marathons and mini marathons, which are always fun. I'm not a marathon person, but I do support a lot of the marathon people. We have stood outside our office because they went right by it, and we would hand out water. So that was fun. Like I told you about the Pegasus parade on that Thursday. The Steamboat Races, Great Bed Races. I forgot about those. Kentucky Proud Wine Fest, the Steamboat Race there, Day at the Downs. So tons of things. And look at, they even have in January sports training. So it is a big deal. When I moved here, I didn't know anything about, I'd heard about the Kentucky Derby, but did not really realize the full magnitude of what it is. So I'm just trying to kind of give you an idea here. Thunder, you can see it talks about that. Thunder gear, Thunder Day information. You can get, shirts. Buying the Pegasus pin is a big deal. That gets you into a lot of events for free. So moving on to, let me stop sharing this. I know how to do it here. Stop share. Okay. So the next thing that would be important to know would be local football. Local football is a big deal. Usually the two biggest, and I'm going to offend someone there, but biggest rivalries, it would be the Trinity and St. X, and they're both some of the Catholic high schools here. But it is such a big deal that they have to have it at Papa John's Stadium. So it is sold out. Parking, you'll walk forever. It's like going to a professional football game almost. So that's a big deal. Very polarizing, and except for when they do some fundraising, then it's not polarizing at all. So they will ask, you kind of almost have to pick a side. I don't pick any side. I don't say anything. So the third thing that you'd want to know is we have a really robust music scene. I know Louisville probably isn't known for that, but we have the riverfront on both sides that they can utilize to have bands and festivals, which I'm going to kind of combine festivals in this. So the music scene / festival scene, because they typically go hand in hand. But we have the riverfront, we have the Yum Center, where, of course, national, your big acts will go. We have Headliners Music Hall. The Kentucky State Fair has, all the big names that come there. So we had Janet Jackson at Derby night. I went to see Janet Jackson, a New Edition. That was really great. And it was at the Lynn Family Stadium, soccer stadium, which is, I think, the best stadium in the United States. It was voted. So the music scene is pretty robust here. There's bands, of course, all over town, on the riverfront, on both sides of the river. So even though I don't know that Louisville is known for music, we do have a great music scene. The next thing, number 4, would be, where did you go to high school? I know that seems like such a weird question, and it was weird for me. So when I would tell them, they would look at me because I'm not from here. And so then I just learned to say, I'm not from here. And they're like, oh, so then they kind of don't care, which is funny. But then they'll ask where you're from. So I think you kind of get judged based on where you went to school. So if you went to a private school, you looked at one way or not. So, but it is a question that gets asked. And so be familiar, be ready with, I'm not from here, like I did. The museum scene. Now, I am impressed with how much, and I'm going to throw it again in here. I'm going to combine this one and call it the arts and / museum scene. So we have so many museums. I mean, I couldn't even, if I listed them all, it would just be a video about museums. But just to list a couple of the top ones would be the Ali Center, the Kentucky Science Center, the Louisville Slugger Museum, 21C Museum, Kentucky Derby Museum, Fraser History Museum, and the Speed Art Museum, just to name a few. So a lot of these are interactive. Slugger Museum, you get to see how the bats are made. The Kentucky Derby Museum is open every single day of the year except for Derby and I think Christmas. It's like just 2 days of the year that it's not open. It's very weird. The Fraser History Museum, they do have some live reenactments. It's pretty neat. I took my nieces and my daughter there when my nieces were here for the summer, and it was pretty neat. The Speed Art Museum is a really cool building. It's all glass and that. So we do, just side note, we do have some really good architecture here. So then moving on, marathons, number 6, and I'm not a marathon person, as you probably can tell, but is marathons. They have a lot of marathons. We have the Ironman here. The river, I don't know if I'd really want to go on the river, to be honest, but We have, the marathon, the mini marathon. They have marathons leading up to it. They have qualifiers for the Boston Marathon. One of my daughter's former teachers was a big marathoner, and she ran in the Boston. A former employee of mine who we're still good friends, she is one of those ultra marathon people, which I didn't even know that existed until her, where you run 100 miles. So now that was at between the lakes, which is Western Kentucky. But it just, as far as marathons, there's many days like I will have to go in and just kind of plan the year where my building is on some of those routes. So I will have to get any trucks, maybe moved out of my lot so that we are not, because we're on a one-way street. So we're not blocked in come marathon time. So we'll have to move those down to another block or so and be prepared for that, because they make no exceptions. They don't care that you're trying to run a business. So marathons are a big deal, and then they'll post the routes and you can go on there, obviously, and then I just plan accordingly. Now it doesn't really disrupt traffic in per se, but it if you're a runner, obviously it's great. And if you do work or live downtown, then you probably want to try to just be ready for those, any type of closures that they'll have. The food scene, number 7 is the food scene. I think Louisville has an amazing food scene. Now, I've never lived in New York. Actually, I haven't even been to New York. But I think for being a state that's probably thought of in a very backwoods way, that we have an amazing food scene. We eat out a lot, and we eat out. We like good food. We're not really fast food people per se. So we're always looking for good food, different food. There's just, it seems like every day there's another restaurant opening up and different concepts. And I'm going to, combine this one with my number 10 in well, I'll wait on that. I'll wait on that for you. So the food scene is amazing. You won't have to eat at the same restaurant twice. We have Facebook pages that specifically talk about it was created when the pandemic hit. And so people wanted to support businesses that were trying to stay open, trying to make it, since nobody could go in a restaurant, right? So it was called Louisville Takeout. I believe, I don't think that was the original name, but that's what it's called right now. So it was like, hey, such and such business is open, and this is their rules, and and this is their menu, and blah blah blah. So that's really how its genesis was. And now it's more of a I'm looking for the best pizza in Louisville, and then there's 300 comments. So I said sometimes it's almost like a phone book, for those of you that know what a phone book is. But it is really a good resource to find if I want to find a certain specific food, or even check and see if this one particular restaurant is good. So a bad restaurant does not have a lot of life left in it. It is very there's just so many restaurants that in competition that you couldn't have a bad restaurant and think that you're still going to make it. You're not going to be able to have bad customer service. You're not going to have bad hours and make it. So I also think that Louisville really has rallied around its restaurants. So one particular, he posted on Facebook that, listen, pandemic is really, we just can't make it anymore. And then he had some health issues, and I think his brother died. There was a variety of things that were happening. And he's like, listen, this Friday will be our last day. And this is maybe on a Monday. Well, of course, on Tuesday, the place was jam packed. He's thriving and moving to a new location, because I think that location has some structural or health issues in it. But they really rally. I was kind of impressed, in that they were able to sustain him, and because it is really good cheesesteak, Barry's cheesesteak. So I don't really like when people who are from maybe another place like Philly, let's just say, and they come in and say that this is not as good as such and such in Philly, and thinking, then go back. That's that's where I feel about it. So so moving on, the parks. We have about 120 parks, and I know in one of my other videos I kind of gave you a brief taste of Seneca Park. but there are a lot of parks, 120, and they might be just a little park bench in a green space, right? Or it could be something as expansive as Cherokee Park, that's hundreds of acres, or Seneca Park, or let's see, Iroquois Park is another one. Um, so just some of the ones, and then like they'll be back to back sometimes. Like I know Shawnee Park almost butts right up to Chickasaw Park, so you can through one, go down the road, a quarter mile, and there's another one. A lot of them will have basketball. Basketball is a big deal in Kentucky. So parks, if you are a person who likes to hike and bike, then calling me and asking me, hey, where can I find a house that would be close to a park? We want to be able to just really walk outside our door and be able to go hike, or walk outside our door and my kid ride their bike and I take a jog. We have those houses here. We have many parks that have homes butting right up to them, and sometimes even peppered throughout the park, which is kind of neat. So what I'm going to ask right now is, if you've liked my video so far and you're still here with me, go ahead and make a comment. And my number is 502-664-9971. Again, 502-664-9971. And if you can hit like, hit subscribe, I would appreciate it. But knowing where to live for your lifestyle is super important to making you happy. I have lived in houses that were just a house, just a place to go and sleep and leave, the next morning. And then I have lived in houses that, my last one in particular that I just loved, that was just the ideal house for our family. It fit our family lifestyle at the time. So it worked, the layout worked for entertaining. We had a basement that I had laid out with, video games in arcade games. Let's see, a pool table, ping pong table, foosball table, air hockey table, darts. So my teenager, I could just say, hey, and it had exterior door, so I could just say, take your friends down there, and I wouldn't have to hear, them, and they could have fun. It had a microwave, pizza oven, all that, so they could make. I had an icy machine, so it was just this teenager's utopia. But because the house was set up for that, and we could have, we had the front half of the house, it was like, mullet. The front half of the house was the formal dining room, and formal living room. And the back was, the kitchen and the family room, which was, exposed beams and much more comfortable. So those, and then all the bedrooms were upstairs. So it really worked for what we had going on in our family, structure at the time. So this is why it's so important, and I know I'm not belaboring this until late in my video, but this is what's important for your realtor to know, for me to know, when you are looking for a home. So I need to know your lifestyle, what you want, what you don't want, what your must-haves, what you will like, because of course, the market is still a little fraught with being constricted. So moving on to my number 9 would be the sports scene. So pretty much whatever sport you like, you'll find it here. Soccer has really taken off the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years, but we have the Louisville Bats, which is a minor league team. We have, of course, the college basketball, college football with U of L, and then in 70 miles down the road, Lexington, UK. Baseball, typically U of L goes to the College World Series, or makes a good run for it almost every year. Track and field, volleyball is super big, especially if you have a kid that's looking to play in really competitive volleyball. The Assumption girls, which is where my daughter went to school, the Assumption girls are usually either national champions or in the running for national champions. Of course, coincidentally, not the AAU team here is mostly those girls from that school. So I know my daughter had never played in middle school or elementary, because the schools that she was at did not offer that. So then when she was playing basketball and she saw that volleyball, she's like, well, why can't I play? I'm like, well, we can get you on an AAU team or something. And she was very athletic. Well, because she hadn't had that that upbringing in volleyball, she was woefully outside her level of expertise. Had she had a little more time, because she has a lot of natural raw talent, she probably could have been competitive and participated at that level. But so they do start pretty young here in volleyball, and it is super competitive. The U of L team, I want to say, won a national championship or made a run some years ago. Katie George was on the team, and then she ended up being Miss America. And now she's working, I think, for the Milwaukee Bucks. So anyway, I digress, but sports are a big deal. You can play any kind of sports. There's basketball leagues for, you know, your kids that are not in high school. I say that, you know, like they're post high school, but not in college. There's leagues for that. There's football leagues for that. So if you have any sports inclination at all, there is plenty that you can get involved with here that is either competitive or not competitive. Just whatever you want, I promise you, you can find it in Louisville, is in the sports realm. And the last thing that I'm going to tell you, but I need you to hit subscribe and like and make a comment on my video. I would appreciate it. And before I tell you that, I just want you to make a note of my number, which is 502-664-9971. My name is Margaret Weathers. And the number 10 thing that you need to know about Louisville would be bourbon. Bourbon is huge. Bourbon is become the themes of restaurants now. I feel like there's a bourbon themed business, being a restaurant, bar, distillery, cropping up once every week or two, it seems like. And they're really good. They're really good. There's bourbon tours. You can take self-guided tours. They have trolley, I think, tours or bus tours, things like that. So if you are a bourbon connoisseur, and I'm going to tell you I'm not, I wish I were, but I'm not, then this is really a place to go for you. And then there are the outskirts. You know, you can go to Bardstown, which is, you know, about an hour away or a little less. You can go to some of these little outlying towns that are also bourbon distilleries and that. So if you like bourbon, love bourbon, which it's really taken a huge comeback in the last 20 years. And the Pappy Van Winkle thing is like, winning Pappy is like winning the lottery around here, winning, like they'll auction them off. So hopefully that I found some things that would pique your interest, that let you know that I know Louisville, and I love helping people find their dream home, find what works for them and their family. And until next time, take care of each other. Thanks. Bye.